that is making the sandwiches. The sandwiches are too damn soggy. That's all I'm saying. Sandwich is not bad. You know what I mean? It's like a good sandwich, but the bread gets all soggy. It's fucking weird.
No, I think you're like onto something though. Like I think you're actually onto something.
There's something going on. There's something going on, man. I don't know.
Something's in the water.
It's a conspiracy. It's some Chinatown level conspiracy.
It's all about water rights.
It's all about water rights. Well, yeah. Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
I'm Griffin. This is Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan. Messing with my hair. Got a haircut.
Yeah, doesn't he look cute?
You want to introduce the topic today?
Today we're talking about Lady Snowblood.
Cool. What is Lady Snowblood?
It's from 1973, right?
Yes.
1973. Exploit movie, revenge movie. We should probably hit from the very top, right?
First, before we get into anything about Lady Snowblood, content warning, trigger warning, just like major content warning. This thing is
major trigger warning.
This thing is pretty messed up.
It's heavy, it's dark, and it's glib about the things that it's dark. Exploit movies tend to be like that. They tend to be very fast and loose with things that are heinous and offensive, and this movie is no exception. And it's very much a piece of it's a flavor of its time. Right?
It's a period piece from the early 70s Japanese cinema, peak period of sexploitation, especially like in Japan and in Japanese cinema.
Right.
There's
no nudity in this movie.
Yeah, there is no nudity, but there's
incredible amount of sexual
violence. Yes,
and sexual violence.
Yeah,
yes.
Whether it's implicit, explicit, subtextual, or overt, it's just like all over the place. But there's still no nudity, which I mean, that doesn't make it any easier
to digest.
Yeah,
no, but it's the heavy subject matter is totally there, and we have to lay down trigger warnings before we get in here because there will be. Because the film is glib about this subject matter, our discussion about it will be appropriately glib as well. So.
It's really fucking dark.
Yeah, it's dark.
Yeah,
it's dark. It's like people who throw their lives away, like just raping and murdering one another.
Yeah. But
the movie itself's great, though. I mean, this movie rules. If I'm being frank and being honest, this movie fucking slaps. There's a reason for why Tarantino dedicated 2 films to
So little fun fact.
Right.
Kill Bill is inspired or directly inspired,
heavily inspired
by Lady Snowblood. I think both the movie. I think primarily the movie. But I wouldn't be surprised because the manga. If you look at the manga, I don't know. I'm pretty sure the case is like the covers, because they were later translated into English, they look more like Kill Bill.
Yeah, definitely.
Aesthetically.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely tried to make the Western manga covers look like it was a tie-in, like a brand media
like with
tie-in.
Kill Bill. Yeah.
Everything's in red and yellow and black.
Yeah.
With the same bold typefaces.
And the
like
one,
lines.
the streak. Yeah, essentially. But the film itself, I think, was cited by Tarantino as being a major inspiration, both for Kill Bill and the characterization of the bride.
Right.
Which, cool. I mean,
and it has a manga that it's based on.
Right. So
and Ryan read the manga, so we're gonna have to defer to him on.
So I actually, after watching this movie, I was so interested in what the contents of the manga were, that I sped read all of it last night. And I went over it again like during today, and so let's just actually get into the topic. So Lady Snowblood is a 1973 live action manga adaptation based on a manga of the same name, Lady Snowblood, written by Kazuo Koike and illustrated by Kazuo Kamimura. The movie is directed by Toshiya Fujita with screenplay written by Noriya Osada. It's starring by Meiko Kaji, who plays the Shurai Yukihime, or Yuki Kashima, like the Lady Snowblood herself.
I call her Oyuki sometimes.
Yeah. Then Ko Nishimura, who plays Dokai the priest. Toshio Kurosawa, who plays Ryurei Ashio.
The writer.
The writer guy.
Mm-hmm. It's like a newspaper writer.
Masaki Daimon, who plays Go Kashima. And Miyoko Akaza, who plays Sayo Kashima. So Sayo Kashima is her mom, and she was married to Go Kashima, but due to the contents of the story, Go is not Yuki's father. And our villains, the 4 major criminals, are Nobura Nakaya, who plays Banzo Takemura, who is the first dude not really technically the first dude she kills. The first dude she kills is the rickshaw guy, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, the whole movie unfolds like entirely out of sequence.
Out of order, non-chronologically. It still gets it. The story is still very told in a very.
It's easy to
understand.
What happens, but it definitely like the movie unfolds in a logical like kind of like a pathos logos kind of way rather than in sequence.
I don't want to keep like saying it's like Kill Bill, but I feel like I'm just gonna slip out every now and then. But it's like Kill Bill. If that makes sense.
For those of you who've seen Kill Bill, it's a little bit like Kill Bill.
Or I should just say Kill Bill is like Lady Snowblood.
but the manga happens out of order as well, right? But not in the same order as the movie. The film.
Yeah. Right. But rounding out the rest of the cast is Eiji Okada, who plays Gishiro Tsukamoto, Takeo Chii, who plays Tokuichi Shokoe, Sanae Nakahara, who plays Okuno Kitahama, and then Yoshiko Nakada, who plays Kobue Takemura, who's Bonzo Takemura's daughter. And I think that's it for the major players of the cast, I'm pretty sure.
Director made a sequel, so maybe someday we'll get to that.
With the same cinematographer. Which I didn't write down. Oh my God. Every time we forget something, but
forget the DP. I don't know. The cinematography in this movie slaps.
The cinematography
too.
is
fantastic,
beautiful. I feel like
I
think it's very much inspired in the manga in that sense, because a lot of the manga it's
panel for panel in some ways, which is actually very different than what we were talking about last week.
Right. So if you were with us for last week's episode, we talked about Lady Oscar, and Lady Oscar is very, very different of an adaptation from Rose of Versailles, or it's just
at least visually,
it's visually very different. Where in Lady Snowblood's case, I would argue it's very visually similar to the manga.
It's really cool though. They do it really creatively. They find ways to make the panels into sequences and shots in this, and it looks great.
Right. Even like, and the manga is filled with silent moments, like a bunch of just silent, more cinematic type moments, where it's just these overhead views or these very.
The movie's not afraid to get quiet for a moment or two.
Yeah,
really cool.
The movie is definitely emulating the manga in that sense. Where
sometimes it'll drop the audio entirely out of a sequence,
and
or it'll replace the audio entirely in a sequence.
I feel it's far more interested, just like in the manga, of portraying its narrative or the themes visually than telling it to the audience like verbally.
That's true, especially like. Sometimes, like, there's one sequence in particular, we talked about this earlier, where two characters will look at one another and there'll be a montage, very, very brief montage of the things they're thinking about instead of saying anything.
Right, and it's just supposed to be images. Like they're thinking of the same thing and they're coming to similar conclusions. Yeah. But, like, it's not something that's said or anything in that scene explicitly. It's just
But it's very stylish. And it feels very.
It's a very much like a vibe or feel type moment. Yeah. Aesthetically, this entire movie is gorgeous. Yeah, it really I want to say.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know whether or not it's Technicolor or whatever.
I think the version you watched, it was definitely like a restore.
So
the Criterion restore.
Right? I mean, without getting into any specifics on where we watched it, I guess
I watched it on a less than reputable bootleg site that was actually missing subtitles from a couple of sequences. But I'm a little Nihongo Jozu, so I figured that out. I was all right.
I watched it. I watched the Criterion restoration, which I think lends credence to the fact that I think this is just a super saturated. I mean, I don't even want to say saturated because it's not orange or anything.
No, but it is. I mean, it is like there's these bold, flat colors, and they pop. And
like the blues and the whites and the purples.
And there's some shots in it, some sequences in it. And this is like further shout out to the cinematographer, where I'm like, how did they even get this shot? There's a shot in the beginning where she's like training in front of the ocean, and you can just see the waves of the ocean just like exploding and roaring behind her. And I'm not entirely sure how they got her in the shot with the cliff face and the water behind her. But it looks great. Looks so good. Looks so good.
I think the shadows, the way the movie uses the darkness and the shadows, and how like black blends in with like the background blacks will blend in with the foreground blacks, kind of creating this intricate and unique framing within the scene.
It definitely has some signature like kind of Japanese like bold stylistic imagery, where there'll be like a sequence where the writer's sitting at a bar and there's just all this writing written on the wall behind him, and it'll like be perfectly framed so that there's just these bold, beautiful kanji on like a perfectly flat surface, and he's there, perfectly like perpendicular to the camera, facing the other direction. And yeah, it just looks sick. It looks so good.
I think another thing that was interesting that they used aesthetically is actual manga panels.
Yeah.
They at 2 points in the movie they
Particularly the birth sequence, I think, is like perfectly ripped.
yeah, or like the newspaper sequence, I think, because that's like him adapting the story, and it's literally just the manga. It's
Right.
direct panels from the manga.
Right.
And earlier in the movie, I think after the first act or so, where it's talking about the conscription or the draft that was established, the first.
Right. Yeah,
like,
we should probably give some like plot context for
So,
anybody who doesn't
right.
feel like watching this and wants to listen to us talk about it. Anyway.
Right. So, I mean, do you want to get into the history? of it a
Yeah,
little bit?
sure. So, the plot of this movie is basically that a woman and her husband and their son are moving to a small town, and this is all told in flashbacks, by the way. And the father is ostensibly supposed to be the new school teacher at this like rural village somewhere in Japan. And this is like during like the lead up of kind of like the nation state building era of like Meiji history in Japan, which is like basically like comes like shortly after like the second of like Japan's like two major civil wars. And so Japan is like building a national army, and the whole country is basically like, you know, young men are getting conscripted from like all over the country to like come join this like national army for like a new, stronger, centralized Japan. And so this guy and his wife and their son moved to this small town. He's supposed to be the teacher there, and there's these people basically who have like kind of taken over the town, almost like the Scouring of the Shire in
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, right? Some people have like taken over where the hobbits live. So this is like a rural Japanese village, and these four like scumbags have like taken over this village, and they've convinced everyone in the village that if they pay them money, they can get out of being conscripted
Like
into
260
the military.
yen or something like that.
Right. And when the family shows up, the woman, the son, and the school teacher, they tell everyone that this new man who's come here, who's all dressed in white, is like there to conscript their sons into the military. And then they all besiege onto him, and they murder him, and they murder the little boy, and then they rape and kill the woman. Well, they don't really kill her.
No,
I
they
guess.
don't kill her.
Yeah, they don't kill her, but they. I mean, she does die. She dies in childbirth. But
so they
kind of
abuse
kill
her and brutalize her in a rice mill, and then she's taken by one of them. As
the rice mill sequence is like, actually, even though it's the most brutal sequence in the movie, is also one of the most beautiful. Like, while it unfolds, it's really insane. Actually, it's kind of a psychedelic scene, but like while she's being brutalized by these people, like there's flip shots to each of their reactions. The one woman of the group is like laughing and covering her face while like smoking this long evil pipe, and this bag of rice is ripped.
I think at some point the frame's kind of like chugged too or whatever. I think it's definitely like shot very viscerally,
and the audio is completely replaced with just
the
mill churning sounds.
And it doesn't cut back in until she screams, and it's a very, very visceral, very or kind of like really hits you like really deep when you're watching it. You're like, Jesus, this is horrifying.
Yeah, but it's also like there's something like the cynicalness and the brutality of it is like fits so perfectly into like the canon of
it's to them that are doing this heinous thing to her. It's a game.
It means
to them.
nothing at all.
It means nothing at all. And she's eventually taken by one of the men, and then he leaves the group, and he opens like a
restaurant in Tokyo, and she uses that opportunity.
And she uses that opportunity where essentially he continues to brutalize her to just stab him in the back. And then after that, she's arrested and sent to an all-women's prison.
And she basically bangs as many people as she can in an attempt to get pregnant, because she's going to send her child out on a mission to kill all the people who betrayed her and who like hurt them. And she's like basically like willing a child into existence with the sole purpose of
executing like her personal vengeance.
Her personal vendetta. and she wishes for a son. She prays for a son.
Yeah, and
but
then
if it's a
it's a
daughter,
girl, it's a
then
girl.
it's a daughter. So she has a daughter. She like bangs all these guys working at the prison. She bangs a priest. That her banging the priest is also like such a, because he's like doing these like chants and
I think
hymns
in the
while
manga,
they're
she
having
like
sex.
tried to convince him to give her blessings so that way she would have a
Have a
strong
son.
son to
Yeah.
execute her revenge plot.
Right.
And it's insane.
Yeah.
She's like
but like the. I mean, as far as exploit movies go, it's like really, 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 really
the
good.
manga is like, it's not just like an exploit or a sexploitation movie. It's the manga is also like sexploitation or exploitative.
But the manga is a little more interested in, it seems like, in like the history of early Meiji era like, politics. And
yeah. So it's something that I think the movie definitely doesn't really touch upon, or only really does, I guess, subtly and visually, because like you see a lot of the older or aristocratic class of the Japanese people, like the ex-merchants, essentially now in Western style suits and top hats. I don't know if you noticed
There's
that.
a period
like
of westernization in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
And they point that out in the movie, but it's
not explicit.
Yeah.
Whereas in the manga, that's used as part of Lady Snowblood's methods of subterfuge or infiltration. Like there's an entire thirds of chapters dedicated to explaining like what happened when bloomers were introduced to.
This is a kind of
like,
old school underwear, by the way.
Yeah. To Japan, and like how that affected the fetishization of underwear in amongst Japanese men and stuff like that. Like
or rickshaws.
There's another like chapter where half of it's dedicated to like how rickshaw culture worked and like what rickshaws were like.
And you said there's also one about the history of pornography in Japan?
There's like three. One's like about masturbation amongst women. Another one is about pleasure toys. And then another one is about pornographic art. It's very interesting.
Which is very, very interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one to have covered it. There's also an episode of Samurai Champloo that's also
this doesn't surprise me at all, because I feel like period piece mangas, especially like set in the Meiji era,
love teaching a little
about Meiji history. Like, you know, Samurai X is also kind of like that.
Right.
Yeah. Where it's like, oh, this is like the history of the Boshin War, like leading up to the Meiji Restoration. Like this is kind of like, it's super fictionalized and, you know, rewrites history in here and there. But for the most part, it's trying to give you as vague and as general of an idea of like who the big players were in this like very violent and which is unstable time.
What I really like about that is the interesting collision of these big epic like things that are unfolding culturally and like around the globe at that time, but the fact that the story itself is actually really, really small.
Right.
I mean, these are like
this
four
is a small
scale
type deal. Yeah.
Who like took over a shitty little rinky-dink village.
Right.
In the middle of
and they're
nowhere.
like not even like that big a deal. It's like later in life, sure, they're
one
a
of
big
them kind of
kind of is a big deal. What is it, Boss Okono or the lady?
Well, I was even thinking like Okada becomes, because he's like a war profiteer.
Right.
Okada's character, I can't remember what it is because his name is Gishiro or whatever.
Gishiro Tsukamoto. Yeah.
He becomes like a war profiteer and, like the
which is like absolutely insane.
Okay, so the writer of this manga, Kazuo Koike, is a very, very influential person, and he's probably someone whose work we will
one of the
return
most
to in the
influential seinen manga authors just in the history. Also, he's a screenplay author, and I think he's written regular just novels too.
I think he did a lot of good stuff in his time. And he did Crying Freeman and Mad Bull 34, Lone Wolf and Cub, all of which we may return to in another day.
I think definitely like Crying Freeman and Lone Wolf and Cub, alongside Lady Snowblood, are the more well-known, especially like Lone Wolf and Cub, because that's like another period.
I think Lone Wolf and Cub might actually be amongst the most famous seinen mangas ever. And he was a student of the guy that wrote Golgo 13, which is probably the
I think like
seinen manga.
the not just the aesthetic, but like the tones of Golgo 13 kind of bleed into it a little bit. There's definitely like an inheritance of like not necessarily, maybe not style, but spirit. Yeah,
for sure.
Which, you know, Crying Freeman, based on what you've told me, I'm not super familiar, but I know of Lone Wolf and Cub. I think it's safe to say that Koike's work is it's like super seinen. This is like, if you're not
One thing that was funny that Ryan, so I haven't not read the manga for this one, but I have watched all of Crying Freeman. So one thing that Ryan kept pointing out was that basically as like a piece of strategy, Oyuki will just like get naked all the time while she's fighting. I was like, oh hey, Crying Freeman does that too.
Yeah,
Crying Freeman always gets naked as soon as like it's time to fight. Pants are coming off.
Because the majority of the people that she's fighting are not women. She's fighting men.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
as part of her like strategy to like distract or disarm men, is to literally like strip or let her clothes get tattered in the fight or whatever. Like give the men the sense that they have this advantage in combat, and
then ruthlessly fucking eviscerate them.
Yeah, and it's the manga is slightly formulaic. I will give it that. Very very interesting though, but I would say the first every chapter kind of works out in the sense of like the first third is introducing where are we. What is the historical context of what's going on? So like it gives you that little brief history lesson, and then by the end of the first third, like you know where Lady Snowblood is, and you know what she's doing, right? And then the rest of that, the rest of the manga is the rest of the chapter is essentially dedicated to
her hunting down these people who betrayed her mother.
No, not actually that. It's more of just like her just existing in infiltration, and sometimes she lets herself get caught.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of her strategies are she gets caught
on purpose.
Yeah, so
it is interesting because like there are a couple sequences that are a little bit different in the manga from the movie. In particular, in the movie, she'll like come to the rescue of someone who's like being tortured, so that then she can kill them and have the satisfaction of getting revenge against that person. But what you described to me in the manga was that she might actually be the person who is like tied up in that scenario.
Yeah,
but then will kill everyone anyway.
Right.
It's like she'll use the fact that everyone thinks she's defenseless,
right? As her advantage, essentially.
As her advantage, right.
This sense of helplessness, she uses that and pulls the rug out from them, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's always within like the last 10 pages or whatever, where she starts
of a chapter, right?
Like whipping stuff out. Maybe like if the chapter is more interested in being like an action-oriented chapter, she like starts fighting halfway through. But in the more like espionage-oriented, like she's like more of a kunoichi type character.
That's interesting because I don't think there's a lot of kunoichi stuff in the movie, really.
I would say it's much more subtle.
There's like detective-y things that they do. They do more detective work than they do sneaking and actual infiltration.
The one kunoichi thing I would give her is like towards the end of the movie, she's in a what is it? What is it called? It's not a priest, but it's when it's a nun.
Yeah, okay.
She's in a nun's headpiece or headdress.
Okay, yeah.
That's something she does in the manga. She like goes full in and pretends to be a nun in the manga.
Was she supposed to be a nun in that part where she's walking down the street there?
I think not.
Because it's all purple. Like nuns don't wear purple.
Nuns don't wear purple. They wear black, but they do have like the purple scarf.
I mean, she had like a lot of. She was wearing a lot of clothes, but
yeah.
But it didn't give me the idea that it was religious in any capacity.
Yeah, but the espionage is definitely more downplayed in the movie. I feel. In the manga, it's more of like she has to use these methods in order to get advantages over these men.
Mm-hmm. The movie more focuses on her blind rage.
Oh yeah, I feel like you have such a greater sense of like Yuki's like emotional state in the movie than in the manga. The manga, she's very stoic. This is like she's professional essentially. Yeah. She's not letting herself lose her cool or lose her temper. Whereas in Yuki and the movie is very, very expressive.
Yeah. I mean, she has like this, like the deepest image of disdain on her face, like at all times, basically. I mean, like the level of rage is intense, and the actress sells it. And I think it's like no wonder that she was like actually kind of a bit of an action star in the 70s. She was like in a bunch of other.
Meiko Kaji. Yeah. She's known for the Alley Cat Rock series, which I think is this like biker girl kind of movie series, and then the Sasori series, or the female prisoner or female convict scorpion series. That's like what it's called in English, I think.
She was a 1970s bad bitch for real. For real. Bring her back.
Like since we're on the topic, I think the only other like major name on the cast is like Masaki Daimon, who plays not her dad, but her mom's husband, the guy who gets murdered. He was in Ultraman 80, and then I think the movie after this one is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla from the 70s, that's pretty cool.
Well, I think Eiji Okada was the main guy in Hiroshima Mon Amour, which is pretty big, and he was also in another movie with with Brando. But yeah, I mean, it's like I didn't recognize anybody in the cast, so not really.
I mean, I think the most famous person was the actress who plays Yuki.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think she is also a singer and a dancer.
Her vibes are immaculate, by the way. Big fan.
This movie is, I don't think I can really like, without mentioning Kill Bill, it's kind of hard to be like, dang, this is just so aesthetically and visually pleasing to watch and look at. It's so vibrant and so.
I enjoy like all of the little implications that they just like don't point out. Like they never make a big deal out of the fact that halfway through the movie she basically like picks up like something of a sidekick who's like this writer.
Right, Ashio.
I guess he's a little bit different than the depiction in the manga. He's almost positioned in the movie. He's almost positioned as like a romantic interest in a way because he kind of comes to her aid in a almost like a tuxedo mask kind of way. He's not particularly dangerous, but he is helpful, right? Especially in the detective aspects of the story. And he helps get her story out there, and getting her story out there lures out the bad guys, and luring out the bad guys lets her get her revenge.
Which I think is an interesting diversion that they do from the original plot of the manga. Whereas in the manga, Ashio isn't like this young guy or this young hunk of a dude that looks like he should be in Kamen Rider or something. He's just this old. The writer in the manga is this old, like curmudgeon-y kind of like bum kind of dude. He doesn't write professionally or consistently. He writes whenever he wants to, and that's hardly ever. And he just goes around asking people for money and then bumming drinks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And Lady Snowblood.
He's kind of a Zatoichi, just bumming around.
Except Zatoichi is like kind of a dude. He's like you wouldn't mind him bumming around with Zatoichi.
This guy's even a bigger bum than Zatoichi.
Yeah, like actually.
I think everybody hates Zatoichi though. That's everywhere he goes. Like, oh, this blind bum, get him out of here. I feel like that's the vibe everyone has on Zatoichi. Like, no one's like pumped that Zatoichi shows up until he like fucking kills all the bandits. And like, oh, this guy's not that big of a piece of shit after all.
Do you think it's because he's old, he's poor, or he's blind? And it's like
I think it's all three.
Oh,
and that's why it's cool that he's underestimated at all times.
Yeah.
In the same way that Yuki uses like her moments of perceived weakness as her strength.
Right.
Zatoichi also benefits tremendously from people underestimating him. Right.
Right.
But the guy who's the writer, Ashio, because of the vague time period through which she was born, you don't know who Oyuki's dad is. So there's a chance that Ashio is actually her brother.
Yeah. I think that's part of the implications because that's also why.
Because Gishiro rapes her mother as well.
Gishiro is Ashio's dad.
Right.
People were led to believe
and he's the last. He ends up kind of being the penultimate Bill to kill. Although the Bill in the Kill Bill movie looks more like the guy who trains her.
Yeah.
But anyway, we digress.
Yeah. Gishiro is kind of like the big bad at the end of the movie. Ashio's dad. We're led to believe he's dead. I think at the beginning, in the middle of the first act of the movie.
50-year spoilers again.
Yeah. And we spend this entire for the most of the runtime just thinking he's dead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually really beautiful. One of the main kind of tropes that the movie explores is all the ways in which revenge is incredibly unrewarding and unsatisfying. Yeah. So there's the one woman, she finally catches her and she's chasing her through these corridors and these hallways, and then she finds her finally. And she's already hung herself,
so she can't be
killed by her. So she's ripping the revenge right through her fingers.
And then she does this really sick thing where she slices her body in half,
and then it just rains blood. It just rains blood. This movie loves to rain blood. It's sick. It's really sick.
So sick with its violence.
With its violence. Yeah, the violence is really sick. It's a set-aside violence.
Not the sexual violence, mind you. We're talking the physical violence of swordplay and stuff like that. And
I mean, this movie plays real fast and loose with the squibs for real. This movie
sometimes there's no spray. Sometimes
there's a lot of spray. Some there's even one sequence in particular when her mother kills the first guy that they finally get revenge on, the one that sends her to prison. The blood splatters so far around the room that it even gets on the camera.
Yeah, the spray is so violent in that scene,
and it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's totally badass.
It's pretty sick. Yeah.
But yeah, so you
But
they
like
never point out that they could be siblings.
it's never
It's never
I don't
pointed
think it's
out
like
at all.
super like overt or like explicit. It's more of just like a here, we'll
Yeah.
present this for you. Come to the conclusions that you think are appropriate.
Yeah.
But like speaking of the blood, it's so bright.
Yeah.
It's so vibrant.
Totally. And it's like really syrupy.
Um,
It's really red.
I
and
really
it's
like
really,
how
really thick.
and this. I mean, it's kind of messed up, but like when they died and started bleeding into like the water, and just
Yeah.
how like
where he's rolling the body, rolling in the water, just getting more and more red.
yeah, and just like how much like the ocean or like the river was dyed with the blood, and
Right.
just how deep of a color it got even in the water.
Yeah,
which
the
was-
movie treats blood like it's oil paints.
Yeah. It's an accentuating color, which I think is kind of a detriment, especially in the end, the final chapter of the movie. So the movie itself is broken up into 4 chapters. Chapter 1, Vow of Vengeance, a thread of blood connecting love and hate. Chapter 2, Bamboo Wives and Tears of Wrath. Chapter 3, Blood-Soaked Umbrella, Grief Scattered Life Flowers. And Chapter 4, The Pleasure Palace, Final Scene of Carnage. So I think in Chapter 4, the blood being so vibrantly red, the fact that it's set in a red building with like red carpeted floors is a detriment to it. I think if it was a slightly different color, maybe like, even white or marble or whatever, like the fact that the blood was so red, instead of it kind of blending in with the carpeting and stuff like that, or like barely being a stain, it would be much more accentuated, much more vibrant. Because she's wearing white, and then she exits out into the snow, and the snow starts dyeing the snow red with her blood.
Yeah.
All right.
The snow and the blood does look cool together, though. I mean, like the ending sequence, she's not relieved whatsoever. She just like screams in like
Yeah.
in a kind of like impotence.
Yeah.
She screams in her like impotence and just like lays there in the snow, kind of presumably dying. Although there's a sequel with her starring, so. But yeah, I mean, there's also, I mean, like the movie's really brutal and it's really fun with the brutality too. Like, there's a sequence where, the movie kind of undoes a lot of like revenge flick stuff. Like if this was like a what's his name with the I'm just thinking of like Western revenge movies. If this was a male-led revenge movie, especially the kind we have in the West, there would be a woman being tortured sequence, and instead you have Ashio the writer being tortured.
Yeah,
and then
beat by the cops.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes time to kill Gishiro, his dad, she purposefully stabs right through Ashio, through his back to kill both of them. It's like it takes the like the door not sharing sequence from Titanic to 11.
It's insane.
They've got this guy trapped and she just kills both of them.
Like Ashio, Ashio's fighting his dad, and this is the final sequence in this is a big climactic fight.
And he's been shot like twice already.
Right, and he's pinned him against the wall.
Yeah.
He's got the gun against the wall, and like he's got the sword against the wall, right? And he's like, just do it. So she walks up slowly
And then pierces both of them.
through Ashio. She could just stab him in the face, or
She
like
could've stabbed him anywhere.
Like she could have sliced his neck. Like we know she's skilled enough to do that.
She didn't give a fuck or shit.
And then because she only just stabbed him through, Ashio's dead, and he gets back
Yeah,
up.
and he's actually not that fucked up yet.
Yeah, and he shoots her.
Yeah, and then he shoots her once, and then she slices him up, and we get another great blood spray, and then the best shot in the entire movie.
Where
he falls over
off
the balcony. And he's bleeding all over the American flag and all over the Japanese flag. And this is like
slow-mo.
This like evil war profiteer is like,
He gets blood all over.
he rips he brings the Japanese flag down with him.
Right, and then like he
thing.
rides on the floor a little bit, and
it's all in slow mo.
and everyone's looking at him, and this
Everyone's-
is a masquerade ball.
Scandalized.
Everyone's wearing these Party City masks.
Yeah.
And
I will say it was the least decadent depiction of debauchery I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They go to this ball, and the movie tells you,
It's a pleasure palace.
It's a pleasure palace, and they
It's
show
a
up.
masquerade ball. It's a pleasure palace.
There's not an elbow in sight. Everyone's
Everyone's fully clothed.
everyone's not even just fully clothed, but like the traditional, like very, very like very, very.
There's no eyes
traditional-
wide shut stuff going on at all. Not even
here at all.
remotely close.
No.
It just looks like a regular, like kind of business, like
It's funny,
conference.
like the women are wearing dresses where they go all the way down to like the sleeve,
Yeah,
all the way down to the
I can't remember.
wrist.
Maybe some of them were wearing gloves too.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And it's just funny. He's like, you don't want to go there. It's such a seedy, dirty place. Everyone's just banging, and you go there, and you're like,
No one's banging at all.
This is the least seedy place I've ever been. But yeah, the image of him bleeding all over the America, like, it's so strategically clearly those two flags.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had points they were making there. We could probably explore in more detail.
I'm pretty sure like a lot of the war profiteering he did was like, because didn't they say earlier?
Well, America is the country that forced Japan to
open
and to
borders
westernize,
and
right?
enter world trade.
Open up, stop being closed.
We bring you baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Another good episode of Samurai Champion.
That was so good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh,
pretty good.
what was I gonna say? Oh, but they say, what's his name? Ashio's dad.
Yeah, Gijiro.
Gishiro. They say he died trying to smuggle opium across the ocean into America.
Right. Into America? Is that what they said? Okay,
That's why he's presumed dead, because he died at sea or something like that.
But it was opportunist, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
it was just
he was pretending to be dead.
Yeah.
Because the authorities were onto him.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I would say the kind of brings me into like another point of the movie does an interesting job in adapting certain aspects of the manga. It's more interested in making you emotionally invested into the revenge aspect of the characters, and it's far more emotional than how stoic the manga is.
I can believe that.
Koike's
other work can be very, very, very stoic, so I can appreciate that.
I mean, I think it's definitely a directorial or stylistic choice made by the film, because comparing it to Lone Wolf and Cub, where can't remember his name, but he's essentially like a pinnacle of stoicism in literature, right? He is unfeeling because he has a son to take care of, he has his job or whatever, and he's just continuing to move on his journey.
Right.
In Lady Snowblood, she's explicitly emotional in the film.
Yeah.
Whereas in the manga, she is still written with stoicism.
Yeah, she's really she's about to snap at all times. She's got this look in her eyes, like she's about to fucking
when she's like Goichiro is dead or presumed dead at his. She goes to his gravestone.
Yeah, she snaps her sword on the gravestone.
Yeah, she slashes the flowers there, and she breaks her sword on his headstone. Yeah. She's so pissed that she can't kill him anymore.
Yeah.
That's not really something you see from the manga Lady Snowblood, at all.
Interesting.
And I think definitely the aspects of the manga that do make it over most accurately, I would say, are like the origin aspects of her, the little training arc she goes on, and the prison sequence with her mom in prison giving birth and essentially banging all the prison guards and stuff like that is.
Which, by the way, I believe this movie's got to be one of the most sex negative movies I've ever seen. Sex exclusively exists in this universe as a form of violence or a form of violent creation, because
violent creation or centrifuge. There's no in between or outside.
Subterfuge, yeah, for sure. There's
subterfuge, not centrifuge.
Because people rape each other compulsively, almost as if this act of violence that they desire rather than some kind of sensual experience. And then the one time it's treated as an act of creation is for the sake of revenge, for the sake of more violence.
Which is
someone who's going to continue the violence after that person's gone.
I think that's an interesting point you make. That's also something that's definitely the manga is trying to make too, that this is such a sexually violent period of time.
Sure.
I think the movie has an anime opening essentially, which is sick as hell.
Yeah.
But the scene following it, she enters that village and then she immediately gets surrounded by those bandits. Where they go, we pray to.
We share everything around here.
Yeah, we pray to the vagina goddess or whatever, and then she's blessed us with you, so we're gonna take you now or whatever. That's word for word, line for line, bar for bar from the manga. And it plays out very similarly, where it's sex is violent in this period of time in Meiji. And then
there's this brutal cycle of revenge that everyone's stuck in.
Yeah,
she tries to save this woman
That's definitely more of an emphasis in the film.
In the film,
So
right.
when she kills, so in the film, the chapters in the manga are played out of order.
Yeah.
The last chapter of the manga is actually the first person that she kills on the list in the film.
Right.
Not
He's like
the-
this degenerate gambler, one of the
Yeah.
guys that she.
but it's also hybridizing aspects and aesthetics found within the first chapter of the manga, and I think a couple other chapters as well. Chapter 6.
It's kind of cool that they felt
7,
free to like just mix
like
it all up.
Yeah, and I think it kind of flows a little bit better within the context of certain scenes.
Mhm.
And so you have Takemura's daughter who makes the bamboo dolls, throws them in the ocean and stuff like that. And
Yeah, we should talk
Takemura-
about that because I think it's actually one of the most poetically interesting segments of the movie. So one of the guys that she's hunting down, he's this degenerate gambler. He's one of the guys who raped her mother and was there when she was murdered, presumably. Presumably was one of the people. I think we see him. He's either one of the people who kills her. He's definitely one of the people who kills the wife's husband and
Yeah.
one of the son and the son.
Yeah.
She's tracked him down to like wherever he's living. He's living with his daughter, and his daughter is prostituting herself to support his like degenerate drinking,
gambling addiction.
like lifestyle. And she every day she makes these dolls.
Yeah, these bamboo dolls.
These giant bamboo wicker dolls that she like hand weaves. And every day she leaves and she tells her dad that she's going to go out and sell the dolls, and then she brings back the money. But what she really does is she takes those dolls off a cliff and throws them into the ocean. And then she goes and has sex with whoever the local Yakuza wants her to,
Right.
and then brings that money home to her dad.
Right.
And then when her dad, asks her about it, she's like, "Yeah, they're so popular."
And it's essentially she's prostituting herself for like 400 yen.
Yeah, it's like not very much.
300 yen. It's
I think it was 3 yen. I
Yeah.
think they said it was 3.
Is it 3 yen?
I think it was
like
3.
just 3 yen.
Well, I'm sure there's been a lot of inflation since then, but yeah, she's not making a good deal.
And I remember we talking about it a little bit, and I think the reason why it's so cheap, she's prostituting herself for so little, is because it is bamboo dolls. That her dad would get suspicious if she starts raking in more cash than what the bamboo dolls are actually worth.
Maybe. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that. But she's definitely also kind of indebted to like the local crime lords as well.
Yeah. And so is her
Who-
father.
Yeah, right.
Like everyone's indebted to this guy
Right.
essentially.
And he's like a cheater, actually, at least in the movie. He's like a cheat gambler, and then he gets caught and they try to brutalize him, and then Lady Snowblood frees him so that she can kill him himself.
on the rocks of the ocean.
And then he bleeds out and bleeds out and bleeds out of the ocean, and she takes his lifeless corpse and carries it up a cliff, and then throws it off the same cliff
where
that
his
her daughter
daughter
throws these images of human futility off the
and it's so
face of the earth.
it's so poetic. It like rhymes so well cinematically and like visually.
Yeah.
Also, it's kind of funny because his body kind of ragdolls as it falls because
Yeah.
clearly he's not gonna throw a real person.
Yeah, they definitely did not throw a real person off that cliff.
But it's such a beautiful kind of sequence.
It's a really beautiful sequence. And like the sequence where she walks up, because there's not that much dialogue in this movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so the sequence where she walks up to the woman, seeing her on the cliff, throwing them off there, and she looks at her and all she says, "They wouldn't sell anyway." Just walks off.
right. And then she doesn't. And on top of that, Takemura's daughter gives her like a lollipop. I think she made or something.
Oh no, it's not a lollipop. It's another. It's like some other piece of. It's another piece of art that she's made.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's another thing made of the bamboo.
Oh, okay.
I thought actually at the later end of the movie when she throws that like sand bomb that's what she was throwing, but I don't think that is. But I don't think that
She
even.
just has
I don't
sand
think that object actually shows up again.
So the sand bombs actually come from. So a lot of the things are just straight adaptation from the manga, but more just like she has these things. So the sand bombs is something that
yeah, she has like a lot of. She's got some like go gadget shit going on in the manga. For
So
sure. And that's
her umbrella is like kind of like in Lone Wolf and Cub, where the cart in the sense is like the secret like utility belt of different gadgets, gizmos, and weapons. Like her umbrella is a sword. It's got daggers she can throw. It's got string that she can use.
and it has some really cool choreography in the movie. Like she'll throw it, it'll float over to some people, and they'll be like, "What?" And then she'll like slice and dice them.
In the manga, it's used for a lot of really beautiful sequences where essentially she's flipping around naked, but like the umbrella is covering her body essentially. It's like it's open and it's kind of spinning like this parasol in air, and she's like hidden behind the umbrella.
Right.
And so the sand bombs or the smoke bombs is from a sequence in the manga where I can't remember the exact context, but she infiltrates, I think, a like a samurai house, like one of the ones that did survive after, the Boshin War. And she squaring up with these guys. She gets naked, and
it's so Crying Freeman. It's hilarious. Like Crying Freeman is like, as soon as it's time to fight, pants are going off.
And it's not like Lady Snowblood herself like strips necessarily. I think that happens like once or twice. Most of the time, it's her clothes, or she lets her clothes get destroyed in the fight.
Yeah.
So essentially, she's nude and fighting the samurai guy. He's already distracted by the fact that she's nude, and then she throws smoke bombs at him, and he tries to slice him in midair. The moment he slices him in midair, she slices his face through the smoke. And then they're like, "Oh my god!" So his other homies come in, and she just starts throwing more of them around. It's the only time she uses smoke bombs, I think, ever in the entire series.
But there are a lot of gizmos and gadgets in the.
I think the one thing that doesn't make it over to the movie is her gun.
Yeah,
because she has a gun hidden in her umbrella, and it's just like, it's not like the umbrella.
The woman who kills herself has a gun, but other than that, and then I guess the guy at the end has the guy who could be her dad, could be.
Now that
definitely the writer.
There's not a lot of guns in this movie at all.
Just the two, I think. Ashio's dad and the woman who kills herself, both have guns. But of course, those were becoming more commonplace during the early Meiji era.
Yeah, especially with trade and stuff like that.
Right.
The second and third chapter of the movie, what are they called? Bamboo Wires, Tears of Wrath, and then Blood-Soaked Umbrella, Grief Scattered Like Flowers. Those are, so the Bamboo Wives is the one with the Takemaru's daughter.
Yeah, with the dolls.
So the major difference in that is when in the manga, if I remember correctly, Takemura is like remorseful for what he has done to this woman's mother, essentially. Like he
really in the manga.
Yeah, he's kind of like he's apologizing.
So he says that in the movie, but it doesn't.
More in the movie, authentic. It's more of like he's begging for his life.
Right.
In the manga, it seems like he's kind of fallen into this depression because of his remorse for his actions in the past.
Oh.
And he's asking her, is like, I do have things that I can kind of want to live for or whatever.
Wow.
And if you can find it in yourself or whatever, and then she just stoically goes, no. And
Sing.
Yeah, and it's a very contrast because in the movie it seems like she's trying to work her emotions up to it, kind of, and it's this explosion of wrath. Like the more he begs her, the more insulted she feels.
Right.
Where in the manga, it's almost like she it almost breaks the armor of stoicism because she's expecting him to grovel, but he doesn't.
Right.
It's kind of an inversion, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting to place it so early in the movie because it changes the direction of the character arc that we're expecting of her, because that's the last chapter in the manga. That's it. She kills the last guy. He's how right was she? The manga essentially ends with how right was she for killing someone who was so remorseful or felt guilty or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, whereas very different.
The film is just kind of like, this was the first thing she needed to do, but this is like the sins of her past that will soon catch up to her, which.
Yeah, because she does. I mean, of course, the reason she's bleeding out in the snow is because
Takemura's daughter, she read the story that Ashio wrote in the newspaper about Lady Snowblood's origin.
Right.
I think like in the third
chapter.
Comes
for revenge. Well, the crazy thing though is that the reason that she knows how to find her is because she told her where to look.
Right.
Before she even kills her father, she says, "If anything happens to you, go to Tokyo.
Come to Tokyo.
Talk to this person. Yep. They'll know where to find me." Mm-hmm. And then she's like, "Well, I would never leave my dad."
Right. And then she kind of looks at her in that sequence like,
yeah. She's like, "Well, later, gotta go."
All right.
Yeah.
And chapter 4, like the Pleasure Palace, that's like the big final, the Pleasure Palace final scene of Carnage. That's essentially a very loose adaptation or filmic adaptation of the 5th chapter of the manga, Rokumeiken Murder Panorama, which is one of the most disturbing chapters, I think, in the manga in general. I mean, there is some disturbing content, like just like. So this is the one I was telling you about earlier, where Lady Snowblood stops a carriage going on its way to a
that was pretty disturbing.
Masquerade party.
Okay, yeah.
And she
like starts adopting all of the worst traits of the people that she's hunting down.
Yeah, and you're like, who is really the bad guy in this? How justified are you in executing your revenge if this is the method you're going to use to go about it?
Yeah.
Like the trail of
explain. So to get entrance to this party, which she just basically shows up at in the movie.
Just to get to the guy that's the head of the manor.
Yeah,
this old dude.
In the weird thing, I will say that the logic of the movie breaks down a little bit towards the end. Like basically, Ashio's dad comes to where he works as a writer, and he's like, "Hey, I'm alive, and don't bother me. I'm gonna be at this place at this specific occasion, and
don't you dare come here.
You better not come there." Yeah,
and you're kind of like, why did you tell us?
Yeah, exactly. Why did you do that? They all thought you were dead.
He leaves on a rickshaw, and Lady Snowblood sees him walking by, and then she immediately runs into Ashio's little newspaper stand, and
he's like, "That was my dad.
I can't write Lady Snowblood stories anymore."
Yeah, he does. He throws like a little tantrum. He starts ripping up the papers.
And it's not even like paper with any words on it. It's like a paper with a scribble on it.
Yeah.
So he's like ripping up
nothing.
Scrap.
He's just throwing like a weird tantrum. But it is funny. So they go to the party, but I guess to get entrance to the party is significantly more difficult.
Convoluted
in the manga.
Just in the manga.
But it's also, it seems like there's an extreme moral transgression that happens there as well. So you tell.
So in the manga chapter 5 or episode 5, I think they're called episodes in the manga. Rokumeiken Murder Panorama. Lady Snowblood stops a carriage on its way to a Western-style masquerade ball. And in the carriage, there is this older aristocratic woman and her daughter. And they're like, the ladies of their house. And they're being drawn by this carriage, driven by this dude. And once Lady Snowblood stops the carriage and the madam essentially opens the door, she immediately like runs and just stabs her in the chest and offs her. Then she puts a knife to the carriage driver and is like, "You're going to listen to everything I say right now or I'm going to kill you." So she has him go into the back and start stripping both of the women. And then Lady Snowblood tells the driver to assault the other girl,
the younger woman,
the lady.
And she basically blackmails him,
right? So
with the sexual assault that she forces him to commit.
She forces him to commit sexual assault, and then she forces the daughter also to take the sexual assault.
Right.
And she's like, "I'm gonna kill you if you don't do it, and I'm gonna kill you if you don't take it." Essentially, which is incredibly disturbing.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. But it's also like it gets
fucking worse.
It's as bad, if not worse, than the inciting event to begin with.
Yeah, and it like gets worse because as soon as he finishes, essentially,
as soon as there's evidence of the crime,
she stabs the girl and kills her, and then essentially tells him, "Okay, now we're accomplices in this. There's evidence of your assault on these women in the girl. I can just go ahead and say that you did this on your own. I just happen to
Who are they going to believe?
Who are they going to believe type stuff." So he goes, okay, I'll do whatever you want. So she puts on their clothes. The women's
somehow
clothes.
she miraculously did not destroy while stabbing these people.
I think she puts on like the younger girl's clothes because he had her strip her first.
Right.
And
she puts on the clothes and then makes him deliver her
to the masquerade ball, and she infiltrates the masquerade ball. And
she's kind of just there sitting in a mask. It's actually a very beautiful moment, actually. So the masquerade unfolds in the movie, like just there's like this party, and she's just sitting there miserable with the mask on, and her miserable in the mask is actually like kind of a low-key iconic image.
Yeah.
And she sees like Ashio's dad like across the way, and it's a good image.
The film's depiction of the pleasure palace is definitely more digestible because
it seems like this entire chapter is like dialed down massively in the movie.
So the chapter continues to the pleasure palace where everyone starts banging.
Yeah,
like it's an eyes wide.
It's an orgy.
Yeah, they're in the bathroom. Well, I guess not the bathroom. They're in the kitchen. They're in the bedrooms. They're in the halls.
Right.
Some of them are outside. And she's killing them. And the ones she kills outside, since it's dark and at night, she positions their bodies so it just looks like
they're banging.
They're having sex in the bushes.
So they won't be discovered.
Exactly.
Until she's done what she needs to do.
Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't really matter because she gets caught murdering people anyways, and she has to just start hacking and slashing through these people in the manor and all these guards.
Yeah, she ends up having to Dynasty Warriors her way through it anyway.
Yeah, and she winds up nude because, of course, like it's a Lady Snowblood chapter, so of course she has to wind up nude somehow, and she's fighting with the sword and the umbrella, and she's like covered in the blood of like, I don't know, hundreds of slain soldiers or whatever.
Yeah.
And the old guy at the manor pops out and she's like, I have blackmail information, blah, blah, blah. She pretty much lays it out there. And they just let her walk out. And she just walks out naked.
What's the blackmail information?
I can't remember, honestly. I was so distracted by
just
everything
the rampant
else
violence
going on in that chapter that I honestly cannot tell you
what the hell
I actually fucking read. Because it was just like... Up until that point, I was like kind of rooting for her. I was like, yeah, go get your revenge. And I'm like, you're victimizing people. The ends just don't justify the means.
Of course. But like, you know, in that endless cycle of violence, like you end up becoming like you're the beginning and the end.
Yeah. And I think definitely the manga Lady Snowblood is much more of a heartless, cold, you know, unfeeling murderer than the movie Snowblood. Like the movie Lady Snowblood.
Although I don't know, like when she kills Ashio in the movie, it's pretty fucking brutal. I feel like she does show compassion though to the degenerate gambler's daughter.
I think
like by telling her where to come get her.
I think, you know what? I have a theory. I think the Lady Snowblood movie is kind of a pseudo origin to how we get to the stoic Lady Snowblood.
Okay.
Because she kind of just takes the stab from Takeru's daughter at the end and just doesn't do anything. She just moves on.
Yeah, she doesn't even retaliate.
Yeah, and she
kind of like feels like, yeah, well, this is of course, right? And this is the step in the cycle that we're at.
And she, you know, bleeds out and she collapses eventually on the ground. And
she's just screaming in
the snow, and then she just screams into the snow, and that's kind of it. And I think one of her screaming into the snow is, you know, the whole, you know, I'm not satisfied.
It seems like she's like pent up.
She's still angry. Yeah.
There's no catharsis or release.
Exactly. The revenge itself was not, you know, it didn't mean anything at all. And
it was just what she did.
And what now kind of deal.
Yeah, there's nothing now, yeah.
Which, you know, it feels like the moment she kills Ashio is like she swallowed the bitter pill. Like she's like, okay, you know, the emotions are gone now kind of. And it lasts for so long, and when she's finally alone in the snow and blood, the lady in Snowblood, like there's this final release, and that's kind of how it ends. I would definitely say it's much more of a conclusive or more poignant of an ending.
What's the ending in the manga?
The ending of the manga is her killing Takeru's what is his name? Takimaru?
Bonzo or Bonzo?
Bonzo Takimaru. That's the end of the manga. She kills him on the beach.
That's it.
That's it.
Does she throw him off the cliff?
No.
All right. So sometimes the like I will say that they're like the editing and directorial flair of the movie is actually its strong points, and I know that those aren't going to be ripped directly from the...
manga is definitely far more interested in being a period piece exploration of what
vengeance and violence
in Meiji,
in early Meiji.
Whereas the film is narratively more interested in exploring the ideas of revenge.
Okay, yeah.
And the emotions associated with it.
It's definitely very emotional and psychological.
Because there is not a lot of emotion that goes on.
I love that in neither story, so she basically has like a sword master, like this guy who like gets her like good at being a warrior. They never explain this guy at all. He looks just like Kill Bill, but the Bill that must be killed. He's never explained in any capacity. He's just like this whimsical sword man who like teaches this little girl how to fight, and he like rolls her down a hill in a barrel,
and he slices the barrel, and she has to slip out of the barrel before she gets cut through, or the barrel gets cut through in its entirety.
She has to like bail at the last minute. It's like very funny. It's a very funny
shot for shot remake of her training from the manga. Essentially, it's so weird what they do. Adapt like super accurately. So you remember how we were talking?
Well, I thought with the mask thing.
Yes. So the Mission Impossible mask.
So for some reason, you explain.
So they're at the Pleasure Palace when she fights Gishiro
in the film,
in the film, and she thinks she kills him. Turns out he's wearing like this skin mask that they rip off, and it was this other dude this entire time. So that's not something that like happens with Gishiro in the manga. That's something that Lady Snowblood does in the manga herself.
So, to pretend to be an old lady so she can be kidnapped.
Yeah. And it's a bit more convoluted. It's another one of those things where the film like breaks apart different aspects of the manga and whatever. So
Well, it definitely makes it into a shorter story.
Yeah.
I mean, she never like half of these little like side stories like going to being
They aren't even adapted.
Yeah, they're not even adapted. Yeah.
I would say like the movie at most adapts like 8 chapters and is borrowing from majority 6 of them, and it's only like, you know, from the other 2 it's just little aesthetical aspects or whatever.
But it's definitely it's like it's taking flavorful bites.
Yeah. Which I think, you know, is the best way to really go about it, because
I think so too.
I think it's narratively much stronger than the manga. I'm much more invested in the character of who Lady Snowblood is, and I want to. I want.
And
to,
actually, you know, I've been staring because so even the movie actually uses panels from the manga at some point.
Right.
It'll show you images like that are literally just
straight from the manga.
I will say that as aesthetically significant as the manga is, the movie's gorgeous.
I would so. Interesting point. Kind of another tangent, but if I read the manga first, I don't think I would have watched the movie.
Yeah.
Me watching the movie first is the only reason I read the manga.
Right.
Because I don't think I would be very interested in the movie if this is what my expectations were having read the manga. Because the movie is far more of a worthwhile investment, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because she's human.
Sure.
Whereas in the manga, she's more of a instrument of violence or instrument of subterfuge or instrument of,
which is a Koike theme, by the way, because Crying Freeman plays with that as well a lot.
And I think Lone Wolf and Cub also, because like he just looks like a dude that is pushing a cart around with his only son, and I think he wears a sign that says, you know, sword for hire or whatever, will do anything for food or something.
Yeah.
And it's these very kind of, you know, obviously underestimated characters of society or whatever. I can't remember where I was going with the original point, but yeah, I think just film wise, much better investment.
Films, it's just beautiful though too. I mean, like the editing,
this is like one
music.
of the most gorgeous films I think I've seen in a while.
Yeah, especially of movies I haven't seen. So I watched this movie for this, and I had heard of it in the past. And of course, every time I looked up Lady Lady Snowblood would come up as soon as I got to the Y. I
think this is an interesting time for us to admit. I wasn't super familiar with this going into it.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
Yeah, I mean, of Koike's work, I'm most familiar with Lone Wolf and Cub. Yeah. I don't know anything about Crying Freeman really, and then this is like my first thing with Lady Snowblood.
Yeah.
But if I were to recommend any of the movies, I would just say go with like Lady Snowblood for Koike films, because I think Lone Wolf and Cub is much more of a straighter adaptation. It plays it much closer to the original novel and manga. I can't say anything about
this movie. Has some very artsy flair. I'll tell you. I'll say that for sure.
So gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and like just like really, really good like choreography. Like there's this one sequence while her mother, Lady Snowblood's mother, is in bed dying from having given birth, and the women who help in like. I guess they're like nurses of the all-woman hospital.
They're not nurses. They're her fellow cellmates.
They're cellmates?
Yeah, they're her cellmates.
Wow, okay.
So in the movie, she says, like, I know you all, you know, called me a slut and you hated me and blah, blah, blah. But this is why I do this. And then she goes into the whole origin story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's like...
But they're sitting on a bed. They're sitting around her in this bed talking. And it's just so beautifully choreographed. There'll be one person facing this way, one person at the edge of the bed facing that way, 2 people like kind of sitting down this way. And it'll move. Like from here on her face, like over to the other side. You
see the entire cell.
Yeah.
You go from one end of the cell to the other end of the cell, and the
inherent drama of that image and of that sequence is really beautiful.
Narrating essentially, or expositing.
Right.
But the just like the
visual,
the placement of where they all are, like they're blocking, and then just the simple cinematic language of the camera moving essentially as the story progresses, and you see their faces of each of them like in shock and horror of this story that. He's telling them.
Yeah. It's fantastic blocking and the atmosphere and
like it's another one of those scenes where like I think I mentioned before where it's like the background shadows blend together really well with the really dark foreground shadows.
Well, it's almost as if they like the maybe 5 or 6 people there are existing in like a void, like in another world,
and I was like
universe.
This is so
they're in the shadow realm.
Yeah, and it's so aesthetically
it's
kind of similar to the manga, where it's like kind of like existing in a void within manga panels, because you can't draw every background, right?
No.
And especially like if it's from the 70s, you just don't have the time to do any of that. And this kind of aesthetically matches that. where it's just like they kind of exist in this void.
This movie like takes time and moments to make beauty out of like complete anguish and pain.
So an interesting point on that is the manga does that similarly, and we were kind of talking about it earlier, where you made the comparison with Sin City, where it's like everyone's so bad that like the best people are just like marginally better.
Yeah.
So during the whole birth scene of Yuki's mother in prison, there's a doctor in the cell with them that refuses to operate on her.
Oh.
So her cellmates go, okay, we'll do it ourselves. And they take the initiative to help her.
Oh, wow.
Right. And she's like, I thank you. Like, because I know what you guys say about me behind my back. I can hear it. And you guys help me anyways. So I thank you.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have to help, with Sayo give birth to Yuki.
Yeah. This movie does kind of like, it like plays with just like such transgressive images and makes something like very beautiful out of them, something like very visually meaningful. And like that sequence, like when she's having sex with the priest, is like really disturbing, but also like beautiful.
And then like the kind of montage, it's like not a hard montage, but like that fade in and fade out, or I don't know what the exact language is. It's like when she's in the prison, but the background doesn't change.
Right.
But her position and like different dudes like kind of fade in, fade out.
Right. Yes. Oh yeah. She's fading in and out of. It's basically just vignettes. It's vignetted images of her sleeping with these different guys.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it's like it's so spooky. It's a little goosebumpy.
It gives a sense of like how much time, or like how little sense of time there really is in prison or whatever, and the red uniforms that they all wear are just pop so much.
Yeah.
It's very like the red in the movie pops to an insane amount.
Yeah, I mean the movie is just, I think I said that earlier, but the movie plays with blood like it's just like it's
paint.
It's the ink of life,
Like it's
movie rules.
The movie is so much fun to watch, honestly.
Fantastic movie. I'm out of things to say about it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, do you have any like negatives, complaints?
Negatives?
Any, like,
I will say that, yeah, I mean, the most obvious negative is that the movie stops worrying about making sense at the very last, like in the red zone, like the goal line,
like the chapter 4, like
right
at the end.
When Ashio's dad shows up and he's like, "Hey, you guys better not come to that party."
Honestly, in my opinion, I think it could have ended with her cutting the lady in half.
Yeah,
and then like it just
be a short movie.
It slowly kind of winds down.
Yeah,
and the movie's already short enough to begin with. It's only like 96 minutes, I think.
But then if you ended it even earlier, it would be
then all of a sudden you have like
really too short,
barely over an hour.
It'd be a short.
Because that entire chapter I think is only like 15 minutes. Like it's literally the last 15 minutes of the movie is her going to the pleasure palace with.
And the pleasure palace is not the most visually exciting part of the movie either.
Yeah, it's boring.
It just looks like a
like getting there seemed cool.
Well, and just like the stuff that was like period Japanese were better props than the stuff that was supposed to be period international style,
or like
stuff.
Period Western.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in that scene, like that's where the biggest goofs of the movie is in that kind of section of the film where like they have the wrong flags on the wall, or the masks are not period accurate to like masquerade masks or whatever. It's just.
Well, and there's like also this hilarious shot. So at one point in time, the guy who's pretending to be Eiji Okada's character, the guy's pretending to be Gojiro, she cuts his hands off. She fights off Goshiro's fake Goshiro's hands. Gishiro. Yeah. She fights fake Gishiro and cuts his hands off, and his hands are still attached to the sword. And then the son, the writer, goes and rips the hands off of the sword so that he can use the sword to like actually go and chase after his dad. And it looks very silly. The fake hands he's ripping off of the sword,
which is like.
It's kind of badass.
On
like,
paper,
it's
such a cool like kind of scene to have in a movie, especially one like so interested in exploring ultraviolence. Because like, yeah, that's a thing that's real. It's like if you cut your hands off while you're holding something for a little bit, the muscles I think will stay like that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Before like it finally like relaxes or whatever. Yeah. And but like
they look like wax hands.
It's just a limitation of the tech. And then when they rip off the skin mask, all of a sudden it's a really obvious skin mask. It's no longer clearly the guy that was there before.
Yeah.
Which, that reminds me, the tangent we went on earlier. So in the manga, the skin mask that Lady Snowblood wears is so that way she could disguise herself as an old woman, because in the manga, instead of, what's his name?
writer.
Ashio
Yeah.
being this the writer being this young guy.
He's an older guy.
He's a really old curmudgeon man, and he needs a caretaker woman to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
So the police show up and start brutalizing him, just like they did with Ashio, essentially. And they're like, "We hear that Lady Snowblood is a master of disguise." So the police.
This movie is definitely of the opinion that all cops are bastards, by the way.
Yeah, I mean the manga too.
Yeah, for sure.
And the cops in the manga, they make her strip for them, so that way they can examine her essentially, and to prove that, so she can prove that she's not Lady Snowblood. And then she excuses herself to the restroom, and who's in the restroom? Lady Snowblood, but in a skin mask that looks just exactly like her, essentially. So that way, when they get taken by the cops to essentially get silenced and killed, she's in there in disguise, and then she just murks them all in the street, which is very similar to what actually goes down in the movie too. That's like another thing where I'm like, the movie adapts a lot of things from the manga and adapts it like fairly accurately. It's just the context around it is very different. Like there's a lot of aspects that it get adapted very, very accurately, but the context is just completely changed or rearranged. Which
I like the spirit though that the film creates. Do you have criticisms other than the ones I mentioned?
No, honestly, I can't really think of a complaint I would have for this movie.
It's a beautiful movie.
This is, I mean, it's the height of sexploitation cinema. So it's like, I don't think you can really.
Which is funny because there's, like we said, there's no nudity in this movie.
I think at most you see some breasts.
I don't remember any.
I think like her mom in the prison, at most you see like a glimpse when she's in that little vignette montage or whatever.
Maybe. It's way more interested in like dried rice, like washing over a person's face while they're being brutalized than it is in an actual.
It has no interest in glorification of sex during this period. No. There's no glorification or fetishization of the sex that goes on.
Every piece of sex is either transactional or violent.
Yes.
In some nature.
Yeah. And I think that's the theming it's really aiming at and really going for. And I think it's very interesting. I mean, I don't think I necessarily have the education around the topic to fully like analyze like the whole, themes, especially around sex in the movie, because I think there's a lot more there that I'm not picking up on, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because it just seems so overtly like tied into the
violence.
Yeah.
The sex and violence cycle.
Yeah. And the fact that it is a female-led action movie, like, and who the sexual violence is inflicted upon.
Of course. Movie's not gonna like split hairs on like.
Right.
Movie's definitely not saying not all men. Movie's saying maybe all men.
Right. And then like the movie's especially saying it's like, especially men during these like Wild West times, essentially, because like, Meiji was just the Wild West Japan.
Yeah. For
the most part, like. During that period of time, we were doing Manifest Destiny over here in the States.
I will say that one thing that I think is most interesting about the movie itself, though, for me, is the period it came out in. Like, this is kind of the international era of Japan. This is Japan kind of marching into its kind of post-war economic dominance.
Trying to appeal to other Southeast Asian and East Asian markets, along with like the infiltration of Western and European cinema culture and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And so to me, what's very interesting is the fact that, this actress was like kind of an action star in the 70s. It almost feels like when we look at this era of like post-war economic miracle Japan, like Japan is literally less intimidated by strong female figures than it is actually today. I think this is like
right in the middle of like Heisei era filmmaking, right?
Yeah, I suppose this would be, this is Heisei. Yeah.
So like.
Wait. Yeah, because I think
Showa ends in like 68
ends in the 60s or something.
Yeah, or something like that. And like,
so this would be Heisei. And
I feel like around that time you see a definite increase in film quality, because then you have a lot of the students that come from the Showa era directors.
Sure.
And like those schools of filmmaking. And so I don't know.
But it's also like, this is like after the era of like Kurosawa, and this is like after, I mean, they're clearly
I feel like it definitely is inspired by of their samurai films.
Well, definitely. I mean, especially we were just talking the other week about how Kurosawa, the accidental blood spray kind of just led to the. I mean, this is the blood spray
genre, yeah.
Right. And so this is a very post Kurosawa, and Kurosawa is like an international style,
right?
Japanese director, right? He works within the international canon of filmmaking, not just like the myopic Japanese canon that maybe people like more attribute to Ozu and people like that. This is and this movie's had such an international influence too. I mean, this is an international.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. I think it's safe to say there's no Kill Bill without without this
absolutely
movie.
Not. There was actually a moment where Ryan and I were just clipping through things, and I went to the bathroom and I came back, and I had thought, I straight up fully thought that he had flipped it over to Kill Bill, because there's a sequence where people are like the shadows are kind of running,
and there's like a kind of a bluish. It's nighttime, so the background is blue background.
And I thought that it was the Crazy 88 running around in Kill Bill, and I was like, oh, would you change it? And then it like cuts away to something else, and I was like, oh, whoa, that's actually such a similar shot. Yeah,
I just trying to.
Kill Bill, I will say though that like honestly is actually probably my least favorite Tarantino film, and that's kind of funny for me because I really like this movie. I really like this movie, and I'm a pretty big Tarantino fan.
If I was gonna say anything, I feel like sure I can see the Bride inspirations, but I feel like she's much more of an inspiration of Oren Ishii.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
definitely.
I read more of an Oren Ishii.
Well, definitely the way that she dresses, and like
not just the way that she dresses, but Oren Ishii's backstory too.
That's true. Of her like
of her parents being killed, and like her mother being brutalized, and then her essentially going.
Well, everyone gets brutalized.
But also,
I would say the Bride's origin story is definitely from this, but then Oren Ishii definitely has like a bunch of like elements that are also clearly taken from this,
right?
And then
I mean, like
there's a bunch of things.
You watch Kill Bill Volume 1 after she beats the Crazy 88, which that is just like,
and then them fighting in the snow,
reeked in cinema history,
blood and snow,
right? And then she fights Oren Ishii outside in the snow, and it's just the end scene of Lady Snowblood.
Yeah, it's got very similar vibes.
I mean, yeah, but I don't think I have any like negatives I can really think of. This is
a really good movie.
I mean,
if you can stomach this,
I don't want to like
really slap.
I don't want to have like have the hubris of saying like it's flawless, because I don't think anything is really flawless, but overtly speaking, it's pretty flawless.
It's pretty damn good. Yeah, it's pretty damn good, especially like what it's seeking out to do. It certainly does so in like in effective and stylish flair. So
I mean, do you have any closing regards?
I'm all wrapped up, man.
I think I'm pretty tapped out too. I would say like, though, watch the movie.
Yeah, watch the movie.
Don't read the manga maybe, unless you watch the movie first and then you're just super curious. We will eventually come back and talk about the sequel, because I think we're both kind of interested.
Yeah, we're both very curious,
because this one was so. I will not. I mean, I don't like to look at ratings or whatever from like aggregate sites, but this one has like, I think like an average of like an 8 or a 9 on like a lot of aggregate review websites, and then the sequel is like averaging like a 6 or a 7.
Whoa, they fell off.
So, but it has the same people working on it, or relatively the same people.
Pretty much the same people. It's pretty much the same team people.
So I'm just very curious.
Which is cool. I bet they had such a blast getting back together. But anyway, I will say that Koike, we're definitely coming back to him. We'll be talking about him.
Yeah, I think we have some definitely other Koike stuff like Lone Wolf and Cub and Crying Freeman,
etc. He had a prolific relationship with Ikegami, who's like pretty much one of my favorite manga artists of all time.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that Koike is just one of the most influential seinen authors in the history of mangaka.
Definitely.
Like, you are robbed of like modern seinen, especially like historical pieces, without Koike. And I think it's safe to say, like, previous week we were talking about Lady Oscar, and I can't remember the author's name, but if anyone is familiar with Kyoko Ikeda, right?
Yeah.
Ikeda. So Ikeda wrote Rose of Versailles, and then
they're very similar kind of spiritually in a way, even though one of them has such an adult demographic and one of them has such a younger demographic. They both have like similar.
So I think if you take Koike and then Ikeda and like mix them together, you get Innocent, which I don't know if you're familiar with that manga. So Innocent is a seinen manga. It's so beautiful. It's one of the most gorgeously drawn mangas I've ever read, but it's really dark. It's the story.
How is it newer or older?
It's a newer manga. I think it started publishing maybe in like the 2010s.
Oh, okay. It's another period piece.
It's another period piece. It's set during your favorite period of time, the Reign of Terror.
Ooh, that's the best one.
It's about
Robespierre did nothing wrong. Robespierre did nothing wrong. Robespierre did nothing wrong.
It's about the build up and lead up to the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror, but told through the perspective of the executioner family, the royal executioners.
Okay, yeah, you told me about this one before. Actually, that's actually sounds really cool.
And there's like it's really really beautiful, and it's fascinating exploration on like the relationship of humanity and when their job is death, essentially.
Yeah, violence. That's actually especially interesting in the context of Japan too.
Yeah,
because executioners in Japan and like people who like dealt with death
and like
were amongst
like samurai culture just in general is so heavily integrated into like harakiri or seppuku. You need a second.
Well, I was thinking about budakumen. Do you know what budakumen are?
No.
They're like a social caste of like ancient Japan that was basically considered like the very lowest social caste in all of Japanese society. And they were like butchers and like people who like it handled dead bodies, like so people who like did
like
stuff like
the
that.
cart people.
They were like but like
bring out your dead.
But even like hunting because so they didn't have livestock basically in ancient Japan. Like the ancient Japanese diet didn't include livestock, so there would be hunting.
Right.
They would eat meat on that way, but they would never like grow animals to live off of. So any like of the different industries or different jobs in ancient Japan that involved handling dead bodies or of any living animal would basically.
I think I'm familiar with like what you're talking about. It's like the frontiersman type deal where like they're not really accepted by the civilized society or like the village. They kind of live on the outside, but they are necessary so that way people
necessary
and like continue to like exist.
They very much do exist to this very day, and their descendants still. Many of them are very much aware of their ancestry, and there have been even like scandals in like Japanese like political life where people will be like isolated or targeted for being a member of the Barakunaman class.
Wow.
And they'll like quit being like a senator or something because someone makes fun of them for being Barakuman or something. It's like really crazy. I mean, like this. So
it's just like it's kind of like I guess because like they are living in like a rural area and like that.
Just the constant need for purity that exists in
is it kind of like
Japanese
how
society.
The U.S. and our relationship to like people like in the Appalachians.
It's interesting. I don't really know how to describe it. I just know that like in Japan, you know, when you go to like a shrine, we have to cleanse your hands, and then you got to cleanse the ladle. And then taking your shoes off when you come inside, like everything within Japanese society is like deeply, deeply tied into this idea of like cleansing yourself.
Right.
And the work that the Barakumen did was like this thing you couldn't cleanse yourself from. And so those people constantly. These people were basically like cursed to everyone else.
Do you think it's more of like kind of like tied into like a Shinto thing, where it's like, you know, since everything has a spirit, they're committing an atrocity by killing something with a spirit or whatever?
I think there's probably elements from both Buddhism and Shintoism in it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But to me that makes innocent so much more interesting. The way you
kind of describe it to me, or like how I'm kind of understanding, is kind of how in like the American West is the frontiersman, like the tracker or like the lead scout, or essentially wasn't necessarily accepted. They were kind of written as wild men type characters.
That's interesting, and I suppose you're right. Like the guys who were like basically like
the real rugged guys, like the pelt wearers and stuff like that. Like I don't want to say Davy Crockett, but like even more extreme than Davy Crockett, because these were.
But I feel like people like that could wash their hands, shave, cut their hair, and then
some of them weren't allowed in like certain towns because they were considered vagrants or vagabonds just because of like their line of work and stuff like that.
That's like on some Rambo shit.
No, yeah. But
Barakumen were socially and like politically isolated,
ostracized
up well until modern era, and like there's still a full fallout for it. Yeah. Pretty interesting, but it makes the idea of innocent even more dramatic if you're coming from a cultural standpoint where death has that kind of bad juju on it. The people who have to execute. Ooh boy,
innocent is like, you know, French aesthetic all over the place.
Really,
you could definitely see like the inspirations of Rose of Versailles, and also like I think it's safe to say like Berserk and Koike, especially like. In the stoicism of certain characters and the stoic nature in association with death, I think you can draw parallels with Lone Wolf and Cub, because in Lone Wolf and Cub, the main character, he's part of the executioner family. That's why he's kind of getting dealt with first by that whole like whatever. But yeah, no, Innocent, I highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, hopefully we can all come back to all these later.
Yeah.
But
I think that closes it out for us. We're just kind of rambling at the end over here. We're not really talking about Lady Snowblood. To round it back out, I guess, I know you hate doing this.
rating it?
Yeah, how would you rate this movie?
This movie rules out of 5. This movie's fucking dank out of 10. And this movie
rules out of 5.
sick as fuck out of 11. Where are you at, Ryan?
This movie's fucking awesome. Like,
Yeah.
this movie's so. I recommend.
It's also such an easy watch, too. This is
I
like
recommend this movie over Kill Bill.
Oh yeah, I enjoy it more than Kill Bill for sure. I could play this in the background indefinitely for sure.
Yeah,
this is like the easiest, fastest, most fun, brutal, disgusting 90 minutes ever.
Like, seen every Tarantino movie. Okay, I'm the Tarantino boy, but this movie's so much better than what it has inspired, in my opinion. Just on so many. It's kind of like when I first learned that like in the Crazy 88, Johnny Moe and then Pai Mei is played by Gordon Liu, and then I watched like all the Gordon Liu movies, and then I realized, oh my god, Assassins from Shaolin and Shaolin versus Wu-Tang, and then the something of the White Lotus Clan is so much better than just looking at a glimpse of it in Kill Bill or whatever. Kill Bill is like a greatest hits like rock album, but it's not of one band. It's of like a million different.
It's a million different influences.
Yeah,
and I think actually sometimes Tarantino manages to make something better than its original source materials. And certainly Kill Bill is really fun, and a lot of people are very, very fond.
Like, if you like Kill Bill, don't get me wrong, Kill Bill's a good movie. Yeah. But I think this is a better movie than Kill Bill.
Yeah, I kind of like it more than Kill Bill, too.
Yeah.
But Kill Bill feels, like, kind of long in some points. I almost never feel like Tarantino's movies are long. But there's 2 of them, and, yeah, I feel like sometimes they're a little long. This movie never drags. No way.
This is Spinal Tap out of 10?
It has Spinal Tap out of 10. For sure.
Yeah, no. I don't think there's this other ending is a bit convoluted. I think that's my only real gripe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like not a great ending, but like I feel like by the time you've gotten there, you've already explored all the things that were really satisfying and interesting anyway. So it's like not that big a deal.
So I mean,
I'm kind of curious about this sequel that the internet's telling us is so bad.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
Is it? Maybe it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
I kind of hope it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, same.
But
I also kind of just want to see other movies she's in though, because if she's in them, like,
I want to check out like
she has like the best vibe ever.
The Alley Cat series, because that looked kind of
biker chick movie.
Alley Cat Rock.
Yeah.
Which I think in English is called Stray Cat Rock, which is like the song like Stray Cats Rock. Gonna rock this town, rock it inside out. Gonna scream and shout. It's very it looks very rockabilly inspired with the motorbike.
Well, there's a lot of Japanese movies that did that, because I actually think Burst City's like a little rockabilly too, and hopefully we'll get to that one at some point. So.
Right, we talked about that for like a second, and you immediately got me hooked.
No, Burst City's awesome.
I also want to check out the Sasori series, or her female prisoner / convict.
I'm down. I mean,
series.
I'm kind of hooked. She's bae for real. So,
but I think that closes it out for us. I don't think we have anything else much to add. Thank you for anyone who's still here, anyone still watching and sticking it out. That's it for us.
What's your favorite revenge movie? In the comments, what's your favorite revenge movie?
Yeah, what is your favorite revenge movie? There's so many revenge movies.
Of course.
A lot of them are westerns too. Yeah, but that's it for us.
Favorite revenge movie.
Thanks for watching. Bye.